Africa, the world's last great growth frontier. Home to over 1.4 billion people, a fast-growing middle class, and booming cities. For decades, European carmakers like Volkswagen, Peugeot, and Renault dominated Africa's roads. But something happened. A quiet revolution. Chinese automakers moved in fast, smart, and relentless. And before Europe knew what hit them, China was winning Africa's auto war. How did China outsmart Europe in Africa? Today, we uncover the strategies, secrets, and surprising stories behind China's rise and Europe's stumble in the battle for Africa's automotive future. 1. The promise of Africa. Why Africa matters to the auto world. Africa has everything automakers dream of: young populations, growing economies, and a hunger for mobility. In countries like Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, and South Africa, car sales are projected to double in the coming decade. But cars in Africa aren't just about transportation, they're about status, progress, and opportunity. For decades, Europeans were the kings of this market: Peugeot taxis in West Africa, Volkswagen Beetles in South Africa, Renault sedans across the north. But by the 2010s, cracks began to show. High prices, slow innovation, poor after-sales service. Meanwhile, Africans were ready for something better and cheaper. 2. Europe's complacency. How Europe lost sight of the game. Europe made one critical mistake: it took Africa for granted. German, French, and Italian brands believed their legacy and prestige would keep them on top forever. They kept exporting older models at higher prices, assuming Africans would keep paying. But roads were changing, tastes were changing, and Chinese players noticed the gap. Europe's failure to innovate, invest locally, and understand customer needs left the door wide open. And into that door marched China. 3. China arrives. How China stepped in and stepped up. In the early 2000s, Chinese brands like Geely, Chery, BYD, and Great Wall Motors entered Africa quietly. They started by selling affordable sedans, vans, and trucks, often priced 20 to 40% below European rivals. At first, Europeans laughed them off, calling them cheap and inferior. But Africans saw something else: value. In Ethiopia, Egypt, Ghana, and beyond, Chinese brands opened showrooms, service centers, and even factories. They didn't just export cars, they invested. They trained locals. They created jobs. And they tailored cars for African roads: rugged, simple, and efficient. 4. The price advantage. Why Chinese cars made perfect sense for Africa's market. Price was king. Many Africans couldn't afford $20,000 plus European models. Chinese sedans came in at $8,000 to $12,000. Pickup trucks at $15,000 to $18,000. And with better fuel efficiency and lower maintenance costs, they made perfect economic sense. Where Europe insisted on premium margins, China focused on volume, flooding the market with affordable vehicles that millions could actually buy. 5. The infrastructure play. Why roads, factories, and ports mattered. Here's the genius: China didn't just sell cars. They built the infrastructure to support them. With massive investments through the Belt and Road Initiative, China financed roads, bridges, ports, and power plants, making African cities more connected and car-friendly. And as Chinese built roads expanded, so did the reach of their vehicles. Europeans simply weren't playing at this level. 6. Electric dreams. How China is shaping Africa's EV future. China isn't stopping at gas-powered cars. With Africa's growing energy grid and rising fuel costs, Chinese automakers are introducing affordable electric vehicles and hybrid models. In Egypt and Kenya, BYD and Chery are already piloting electric taxis and buses. While Europeans debate policies in Brussels, China is building charging stations, supplying batteries, and teaching mechanics how to service EVs. The future is electric, and China is wiring it right into Africa. 7. Local partnerships. How Chinese brands won hearts by working with Africans. Rather than parachuting in, China partnered with local entrepreneurs, governments, and workers. They hired African staff, trained them, and gave them opportunities to rise. Plants in South Africa, Nigeria, and Ethiopia now assemble Chinese cars, creating thousands of jobs. Europe stuck to old export models, China-built relationships and loyalty. 8. The used car problem. One reason Europe stumbled? The flood of used European cars into Africa. While new cars from Peugeot and VW sat in fancy showrooms, thousands of second-hand Mercedes and BMWs clogged African ports at a fraction of the price. Europe's own used cars cannibalized their new sales. China, on the other hand, didn't have this baggage and focused on fresh, affordable models tailored for Africa. 9. The image transformation. From cheap to smart. When Chinese cars first arrived, many Africans were skeptical: were they reliable, safe, durable? But over the years, these brands improved quality, added warranties, and proved themselves on Africa's rugged roads. Today, brands like Geely and BYD are seen not just as affordable, but aspirational. They've shaken off the cheap knockoff label and built trust. 10. Europe strikes back? What's next for Europe and the competition? Europe hasn't given up. Volkswagen is investing in South African plants, Renault is pushing budget-friendly models in North Africa, and Peugeot is rebranding itself as a partner for Africans. But it may be too little, too late. Because China has already embedded itself not just as a car maker, but as a builder, employer, and partner in Africa's automotive journey. In the battle for Africa's auto market, Europe relied on its past. China invested in the future. Where Europeans saw a market, China saw a partnership. Where Europeans hesitated, China moved. And today, Chinese cars are rolling across Africa not just as vehicles, but as symbols of a new era. The lesson? In the global auto war, the winners are those who adapt and those who listen. This was how China outsmarted Europe in Africa's auto war. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into the future of cars, business, and beyond. See you in the next video.